All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Augusta. Looking forward to another exciting CAB meeting today. If we look around the table, we notice we have a number of seats empty. In fact, it looks like we have 11 board members present, which means we do not quite make quorum for an official meeting as of yet. What we are going to do is continue on with our day as an informational meeting. Once we make quorum, I'll let everybody know, and we'll be able to continue on with business as a business meeting, as a full board meeting. But at the moment now, even though we're going to continue on with our agenda, I'm going to let you know this is informational purposes only for the time being. Okay. A quick introduction, name, what you're doing here, and then we'll move into the next phases of our meeting. We'll start with.
All righty. Good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. I'm Greg Murray. I am chair of the CAB.
I'm Charles Hilton, vice chair of the CAB.
Ronna O'Brien, FD&SR vice chair.
Kim Ray, waste management vice chair.
John Thomas on the CAB.
Bobby Williams, Vice Chair, Administrative and Outreach.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Fulmer with the South Carolina Department of.
Good afternoon. I'm Greg O'Quinn with South Carolina DHEC.
Mike Buddy, Manager, Savannah River Operations Office.
Amy Boyette, Deputy Designated Federal Official for the CAB. I love saying that.
Jana Dawson, EPA Region 4.
Shelley Stansel, Georgia DNR, EPD.
Hubert Von Tool, CAB, Vice Chair, Long-Term Missions and Budget.
Ken Sejuan, Savannah State University, CAB member.
Juanita Campbell, Administrative and Outreach Chair.
Phyllis Britt, Facilities Disposition and Site Remediation Chair.
Candace Kay, Waste Management Chair.
And I am James Tanner, Department of Energy. I'll be your facilitator for the next 2 days. Greg, are you ready to give your update, sir?
Are you ready? Now, do I actually, can I gavel us in, or do we not have anything to gavel in?
Why don't we wait till we have quorum, and then we'll do the gavel, because that seems pretty official.
Okay, no gaveling then. All right. No gaveling. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my home, Augusta. I live about 5 minutes from here, and I very much appreciate the short commute. Thank you, Heather, for doing that. And thank you, CAB members, for being here today and tomorrow, and for your deliberations and all the important matters that are coming up. I think all the topics are big on this agenda, but I'm particularly looking forward to learning more about the ABD, the Accelerated Basin De-Inventory Program, tank disclosure, and thanks to Kim's encouragement, the cybersecurity program. I also think one of the most important things we do is schedule for this meeting, starting to flesh out the work plan for 2024. For our newer members, the work plan establishes the list of topics CAB will consider in a given year, the list of questions DOE will would like our advice on, and therefore it determines to a large extent what presentations we get for the coming year. And it's also a chance for us to make sure some of our priorities are covered in the coming presentations. So we have important work to do today and tomorrow. Thank you, CAB members, for your time and consideration and all you do for your communities and the CAB. And thank you, subject matter experts, agency representatives, DOE leaders, CAB staff for being with us today and tomorrow. We literally could not do these meetings without you and your expertise and coordination. So now I'd like to take a moment to update you on a meet and greet that we had on January 8th at SRNS in Aiken with Mr. Jeff Avery, EM2, or the second in command of environmental management, and Frank Rhodes, NSA2, or the second in command at NNSA. Charles and I were there as the current vice chair and chair of the CAB, and Phyllis and Candace were there as the incoming chair and vice chair. The meeting lasted for over an hour, as I recall, and for my part, this was an opportunity to talk specifically with NNSA about the SRS landlord transition from EM to NNSA. So now I'm becoming one of these people who gives abbreviations for everything. I'm sorry about that. Transition from environmental management to NNSA and the transparent flow of information to the CAB that must be maintained. Mr. Rhodes of NNSA took several minutes to brief us about NNSA, noting that its primary mission, interestingly, is to build nuclear weapons, reduce nuclear threats, and respond to NBC terrorism, NBC being nuclear, biological, and chemical terrorism. There and later, via an email, he provided information about pit production as part of its nuclear weapons mission, which the NNSA will oversee and which is scheduled to start out at the site in an undetermined number of years. Now, we know that pit production is outside the purview of the CAB, but of course, the pit production process will produce waste that must be disposed of and therefore will fall within the mission of the CAB. That is, aspects of pit production clearly fall within the scope of CAB, so CAB must at least minimally be involved with planning for the disposition of pit production waste. Mr. Rhodes noted that the official transition will take place on October 1st of this year, and he assured continued community engagement, that the transition shouldn't lead to much of a change at all, and that, quote, the CAB will continue to operate as normal. I very much appreciate Mr. Avery and Mr. Rhodes taking their valuable time to brief us on the transition. But I mentioned to both of them that I hope NNSA will have a regular presence at CAB meetings. Even if the transition is not a big issue to DOE, it's a very big uncertain issue to CAB. The CAB needs to be able to trust NNSA, and trust is only built over the long term with repeated, positive, and open engagement. And I want to, since Charles and the other folks were there, Charles, did you have anything you wanted to add about that?
I've had my share of concerns with the transition and the reporting to the CAB and what our mission would be ultimately. In all honesty, coming out of that meeting, I felt very much hopeful that the communications would continue from that side. I was actually shocked at how Mr. Rose responded to our questions, how open he was with us. I know he said he was somewhere and they asked him what he did for a living, and he said, I make nuclear bombs. And they kind of looked at him funny, and they gave him his card and they said, you do make nuclear bombs. And I realized the secretness of what they do, the security concerns that we have, but I was super impressed with his presentation. I understand better now why the transition is taking place, and I was very encouraged coming out of the meeting with the openness.
Phyllis, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, follow up what Charles said. I agree. I was very pleased because I had heard NNSA representative speak twice before who essentially said, we're not like EM, what we do is secret, we can't tell you. And so he was extremely open, which I don't think it was just a snow job. I felt like he was being honest about what he could be honest about. And so I thought that was helpful. I was also impressed. I think Charles has his here. Charles and Greg both received a command coin, which I didn't even know what that was. And maybe, Amy, you can explain what that is. But it's unusual for civilians like us to get such a thing. And they both received one for their efforts on the CAB. And I thought it was a great commendation on what they do.
Yeah, it's Mike Bunny from Center of Operations Office. The command coins is tradition started in the military, exchanging those coins between commands. I don't really know the roots of the tradition, and I've actually never done it. So not a perfect explanation of it, but that's it. Started in the military, and all these commands have these coins that they exchange. Particularly given the commanders sometimes give them as sort of an award for special actions that people within their commands do. Of course, it comes with all the requisite government rules about how do you procure them, where they come from, who's paying for them, all that kind of stuff. So.
And they have, on one side, it mentions DOE, right? And what's on the other side?
Probably Office of Environmental Management.
It's a, yes, it's an
It's a special
EM logo
coin
of
that,
some sort.
yeah, that they give to recognize the service and they're appreciative of what you've done. And I'll say it again here, I wouldn't know, I've never gotten one. So, Mr. Avery, if you're listening. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, I was quite honored by receiving that, and thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Candace, did you have any other comments about the meeting? No? Okay. All righty. So that takes care of that then. So finally, as several of y'all know, today is the last meeting for several of our members. Ruth Hollingsworth and Steve Riley will not be returning for the coming year. Neither will a group of members who have reached their term limits and will not be returning. That'd be Bobby Williams, Jim Gill, Narinder Malik, Charles Hilton, and me. First, I wanted to thank them all for their service on the CAB, but I also want to give them time to make any farewell comments they'd like. I'd like to start with Narinder can't be here today. He's traveling. He did send some comments. He said to the group, I faithfully served on the board and had an opportunity to learn about SRS and share my experiences with others. I had learned a lot from the presentations by the subject matter experts. I'd like to express my sincere thanks to James, Heather, Audrey, and Amy, and best wishes to the new board members. Sincerely, Narinder. So that was kind words from Narinder. Let's see, Bobby, would you like to have any comments?
Bobby Williams, CAB. I'd just like to say this is my last meeting serving on the CAB. I've been on the CAB for 6 years. I worked at SRS for 36 years, and I learned from the CAB how much I did not know about SRS. And it's been a good community service. And I thank you all. I thank the DOE reps, what they do, and all your time that you give to us. And I'd just like to say thank you for allowing me to have served.
All right, and Charles, I think you said you'd like to say something.
First, I'd like to say thank you to DOE as a whole for allowing me to serve for the past 6 years on this CAB. Most have figured out I'm a science nut by now. And because of the opportunities I've had on the CAB, I've actually seen where history was made by touring the facilities within SRS and the tremendous impact it's made on the economy of our area. But I've also heard the environmental ramifications of what was done there. And so it's been a lifelong opportunity for me. To all of the DOE employees that are here, thank you for the work that is being done. The waste tanks at SRS has concerned me for many years. For those of you who don't know me, I've had an environmental background my entire life, and I have been concerned about those waste tanks more than anything else out there. And to know that we now have a date and a time when these things will be closed up, they will be emptied, cleaned up, and grouted, gives me much hope for the future of the water in this area. I'm not concerned about me. I'm 71 years old, but I am concerned for my children, and your grandchildren and children. So it's a tremendous accomplishment that has been made, and that's because of the many DOE workers that are down there. To Mr. Budney, my very first meeting with you was at CAB orientation. I think you'd been there 2 weeks, I'd been there 2 minutes. So you made a commitment at that meeting to us as to openness and responsiveness to every question that we had and our concerns. And I simply give you an A+ for what you've done in my 6 years on this cab. To Amy, to Avery, to Jim folks, and other staffers, thank you for putting up with me and my myriad of questions. I've never been shy about asking questions, maybe the question that you didn't want to hear. But you've always been kind. If you didn't have the answer in your pocket, which you usually did, you came back at the next meeting. Or Jim, I'll never forget the time you called me personally, and you took an hour and a half out of your day to explain something that I didn't understand. That's the kind of response we've had from these employees. To James, to Heather, Audrey, and all the staff that makes this happen, I simply say thank you. I see your job as kind of working in the children's department at our church, and you putting up with 20 whining children all the time. Rest assured I won't be applying for any of your jobs. I don't think I could do it. More importantly, to my fellow cab members, thank you for the time you give of yourself to serve not only what I consider an advisory board, but also a watchdog group, as to see what's actually happening at Savannah Riverside. What you do is important, and remember, you don't just represent yourself. You represent a lot of people back home, wherever that may be. I've made friends on this board that I will cherish the rest of my life. I remember simple things like last year. Some of you know that I had a hard time with my mom. I left the hospital one morning where I just put her in hospice and came to 2 days of meetings here at the cab. A month later, we had committee meetings, and I don't forget this. First person I probably ran into was Bobby Williams. First thing she said to me was hello. The second words was, how's your mom? Bobby, I'll never forget that. Just the care and the concern that you had for me and my family. There's other things so many things that have happened. I've made friends on this cab. Greg, thank you for your leadership, but more for your friendship that has grown over the past few years. And thank you, Cab, for allowing me to be your vice chair and for allowing me to be a spokesman for you. Phyllis and Candace, I challenge you in the coming years as you serve this board, get the complete tour started back up. I tried and I failed. And I'm not talking about the drive-by tours, I'm talking about inside the building tours. Serving on this cab, I realize, is intimidating. As big as my mouth is, I was intimidated my first year. We had never seen anything like this. The ride-by tours are good, but actually seeing where the history and the operations were done gives you a whole new perspective of what these presenters are actually talking about. I'd also like to suggest to you that the annual work plan be brought back and start back at the committee level. When COVID occurred, because of all the problems, we couldn't even meet. DOE had to take the responsibility of the lead agency on putting these work plans together. I see developments even here today. Before COVID, committee chairs met with the subject matter experts, and we worked out a work plan. And it was a two-way street. You know, the concerns of DOE that they wanted us to address and our concerns. And I'm not saying they're not listening to us. DOE officials have always listened to us. But I think we get a better feeling if that work plan originates at the committee level and works forward. Fellow cab members, I challenge you to read the emails, study the handouts, and be prepared for these meetings. somebody's going to have to replace my big mouth and my 1,000 questions that I ask every time. And if nobody does that, y'all will get out of here on time or in record time. So I challenge you to be prepared for these. And I would suggest one final rule change for the cab as a whole, our operating room rules, and I have gotten this for our officials. No male member can revert to their younger hippie days and grow a ponytail while on the cab. So that may be something you want to consider. There may have been cab members who enjoyed serving on this body as much as but I challenge you to find one that has enjoyed it more than me. So thank you, fellow cab members. Thank you, DOE officials, subject matter experts, to our staffers at S&K that make it all possible and even got us cookies. So thank you for all of y'all, and I wish you well in your future endeavors.
All right, so that'll come down to me then. Now, of course, Washington had his farewell address. And of course, I'm not Washington, but I'm not going to pass on my opportunity to say a few things about my 6 years as a member of the CAB. So this farewell address gave me an opportunity to think about some of this and consolidate these ideas. And I appreciate your indulgence as I take a few minutes to think about them out loud. First idea that has informed what I think about and do on the CAB is to remember to follow the mission. Our mission is to provide DOE EM with information, advice, recommendations concerning issues about the EM program at SRS. The program at SRS broadly addresses the cleanup of decades of nuclear weapons production and nuclear research at SRS. This means a couple of things to me that sometimes have been hard to adhere to. We provide information, advice, and recommendations. We do not have any formal say in what DOE or SRS does. We do not provide oversight. We are advisories, so DOE does not have to listen to a single thing that we say. Yet, it is encouraging to me how responsive they are to our advice. An analysis I did a few years ago when I was worried about what was happening or was not happening, I just wondered if I was wasting my time or not, suggested that they take at least some form of our advice more often or not. The second thing it means to me is we provide information on nuclear cleanup. We do not get involved with things that make the mess, like weapons research and production. We get involved with cleaning up after weapons research and production. It's a fine line at times. Recall my previous conversations about NNSA and pit production, but it is an important line. The second idea that informs what I do on the CAB comes from a philosophy that I've run into called effective altruism. This philosophy suggests that when you donate your time and resources, you try to focus on issues that have a big impact, that we can actually do something about, and that may be overlooked. I admit readily that I have not always met this standard. Yes, some of my recommendations were adopted, but in particular, I'm not always sure they were consequential. Our members' time, our time is valuable. DOE's time is valuable. Use it wisely. The third idea is to have a mental framework for your decisions and votes on recommendations. I try not to be completely swayed by what others think. What you, my CAB colleagues, think is important to me as I consider a recommendation. But I also look for recommendations that first, accelerate mission completion, second, reduce risk to SRS workers and the public, and third, reduce costs. I'm very skeptical of recommendations that do not clearly meet one of these three criteria. The fourth idea is related in that it's tied to costs. Thinking about finances, it's important for me to remember when we talk about DOE money or EM money, what we're really talking about is taxpayer money. Money that most people have worked hard for, and we always need to respect that. The fifth idea is simply don't self-censor your advice. Sometimes we hear that our ideas are not within the mission, even though we feel we are. When that's the case, I think we should go ahead and provide the advice. DOE can always say no, and they can explain why it's not within our scope. But the mere fact that the CAB provides that information gives DOE information about what's important to the CAB. Finally, the CAB is full of opportunities. This is an opportunity to do fantastic public service. It's not a high school car wash or a bake sale or a Saturday morning pancake breakfast. Those are important community building activities, but are not efforts to protect our communities for generations like the CAB. But that's not the only opportunity. It's also an opportunity to see and do and learn things that few people get. I've seen amazing technology, talked and asked questions of really, really smart people, and toured things that very few people get to tour. I keep thinking one of the most amazing tours we've done was a private tour of private tribal lands near Los Alamos, where you literally had to be careful where you walked to avoid stepping on pieces of centuries-old pottery laying all over the ground. And that's always been striking me and something that very few people have gotten to do. And finally, it's an opportunity to do public service with some really nice, really interesting people. So I'll use that to transition to my thank yous. And by the way, this is always dangerous because you always fear leaving people out, and I apologize if I do. Thank you, CAB colleagues, for serving on this board with me. It's been a pleasure. I want to give a special thank you to my friend and Vice Chair Charles. I've spent a lot of time with this guy. We've driven for hours and hours to get to meetings together in what I call distant lands, like Paducah. We've sat side by side through who knows literally how many days of meetings, and we've talked CAB business almost nonstop during all that time. He's always been friendly and professional and supportive, even when we didn't agree on issues. And thank you, Charles, for helping me lead this wonderful group. And finally, I want to thank all our DOE and agency colleagues. As I said earlier, we could not hold these meetings without you. Mike and Amy, thank you for your time you spend with the CAB, and on behalf of the CAB, I'm always impressed that you take so much of your time to spend with us. And thank you for your patience with me as chair. I know it was not always easy. Thank you to CAB staff for all you do. Audrey, you make CAB outreach so much better with your photography and other outreach efforts. Heather, you've always taken such good care of us and made us feel comfortable and safe. I know coordinating the travel of so many people is extremely difficult, and you do it extremely well. And thank you, James. Spent a lot of time with James. Thank you. So yeah, that wraps up my update. Thank you, CAB members. If there's anything I can do to make your meeting better, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great meeting. Thank you.
So yeah, we've got a great day planned. We're going to move from here into our agency updates. We'll run through those bits. We'll have some committee updates. We'll just take stock of where we are across all the subcommittees, see what happened in last month, see if there's any directions you want to go. We'll take a short break, and then we're going to get into some of the meat of the day. We've got work plan topics, and so Charles was talking about that a little bit earlier, how this will be a great opportunity for you today, all of us, to not just hear what the department is thinking as far as the 2024 work plan, but what you think of what should be the 2024 work plan. You probably saw a couple weeks ago, I sent you all an email, be thinking about what you want to see, be thinking about what you think is important. A couple of you sent me some advice or suggestions. I've added those to the slides. So we'll get a chance to talk about that today. But that's not the limiting factor. What you see on the screen is not the end all be all. If you have other ideas, other thoughts, something comes to you in the beginning of this, tomorrow, a week from now, we can add to it. We can keep adding to it because the work plan is a living document, right? We can always amend it as we need to and try to work things in. It's not always easy, but we do try to do that as best we can. But right here, this will be our best opportunity to get everybody's voice in. And Charles, you'll be happy to know, well, my plan is to gather everybody together again, just like we used to, in person. Our committee chairs, our points of contact. We'll get everybody working on it in the same room at the same time and really get that active participation, that active in-person participation back. That is what we want to do. That's what we've been talking about doing to make it whole. After that, we've got another additional piece of board business today. We have a draft recommendation that we're going to talk about. We'll take some public comments, and then we'll recess for the day. Are there any questions before we move on? And before we move on, there was one very important thing we need to do. We are now officially there. Would you mind gaveling in for us, Greg?
All righty, thank you, everybody. This meeting is called to order.
Thank you. And we will start with the Department of Energy. Mr. Bundy, if you would, please.
Okay, thanks, James. Hey, we're happy to be meeting here in Richmond County on the Georgia side of the river. We like to move around and make sure we include all our stakeholders in our meetings, so it's important to be over here today. As we already mentioned tomorrow afternoon, unfortunately, we have to bid farewell to Steve Riley, Ruth Hollingsworth, Bobby Williams, Jim Gale, Narinder Malik, Charles Hilton, and Greg Murray. And of course, we thank you for all your hard work here in the cab. When I came down here 6 years ago, I didn't know what the cab was other than something you took a ride in to get from one place to another. And I got to tell you, it's been an honor to work with a group of individuals who are so concerned about their community that they would take the time out. Because trying to influence the federal government to do anything is not that easy. And so I really appreciate everything you've all done. And please don't be strangers. You can always come back to future CAB meetings. You can make public comments at the end if you want. And the cool thing is about the public comments is that I could choose whether or not to answer Charles' question. Okay, in other sad news, today is this meeting is the final meeting that Jimmy McMillan will be with us. He has made the completely irrational decision to retire from the department. Can't figure that one out, but he will be, and we're honored to have served alongside him. He's been a great leader for our organization and done some really marvelous work, and he's working right up to the last day trying to get us some carbon-free energy too, so well done. Okay, on to the status of our programs and projects. So the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative that we're building at the University of South Carolina, Aiken, is coming along very well. Steel structure's all up. The objective is to get the walls and the roof, plumbing, air conditioning, electrical put in place. And our one of our objectives for EM-wide this year is to get the whole outside structure put in place before the end of the calendar year. Contractor's doing a really good job over there, keeping us on track. So looking forward to having that place open early in 2025. Transition. We continue our planning for transition. Things are going smoothly, and we'll provide you, continue to update you when we have more information. Everything's in place budget-wise. We know which positions are moving from one organization to another. We continue to have regular meetings with NNSA on those things, so it's really moving along just the way it should be. And we've even got, as you may have heard, Michael Michelanis is coming back from Los Alamos to be the NSA's Savannah River Field Office manager, so he'll become the site manager. And he's already been engaged in the discussions with us on the transition. So things are working well there. As for the budget, they're continuing, the third continuing first. So we'll see how that works out, if we get a budget or not after that, or if we continue on another continuing resolution. We have no other information there. So Specific operational items, L areas continue to receive nuclear fuel shipments from both domestic and foreign research reactors. H Canyon has completed cold runs for the Japanese Fast Critical Assembly project and has initiated the contractor readiness assessment for startup. They've completed the independent verification review for implementation of updated documented safety analysis. So things are on schedule for the FCA project to do hot operations this spring. The new electrolytic dissolver used in this process will also be used to disposition other non-aluminum spent nuclear fuel that's currently held in L Basin once we finish the FCA project. And I think we have a presentation on the FCA project later, maybe. Maybe. And H Canyon has already completed 4 dissolutions of spent fuel, the regular aluminum clad spent fuel this year, out of the 7 that they have planned for the year. In K area, we continue doing down blending operations, completed 47 of the planned 120 down blends. I think we planned 100 last year. We did slightly over that. So we've trying to slowly accelerate that process. And we've completed 5 of a planned 28 shipments for this fiscal year out to WIP. On liquid waste, so we're continuing to work to accelerate the processing of material through the salt waste processing facility. They've processed, I think they might be over 600,000 gallons for the fiscal year at this point. I think the last time I read it was like 594,000, so every day they add more. And as I said, we're still working to try, we've discussed before about that we need to accelerate the process of processing material through that plant. The biggest issue we have right now with that is in the cross-flow filter. And so there's a plan in place to make those filters instead of 10 feet long, they're going to be 16 feet long. And they're going to put about 24% more tubes inside the filter itself. All the experts believe that that's going to enable us to really accelerate the processing because it will reduce the time between when we need to clean those filters going forward. So that'll take us several months to get those manufactured and put in place, the lengthened filters. SDU construction is going well. SDU 9 cell construction and liner installation and the leak test is complete. And we're on track to get that final critical decision for approval in the second quarter of fiscal year 24, several months ahead of schedule. SDU 10, we got 22 of 25 walls complete, 179 of 208 columns moving right along, and site prep for 11 and 12 is complete. Defense waste processing facility, a lot of initiatives over there to reduce processing cycle times and maximize waste loading in each batch and increase the equipment reliability. We've, as of January 22nd, 5 canisters have been leak checked, 59 of a planned 235 have been double stacked. So everything's going along there well with modifying the glass waste storage buildings. And the salt stone production facility has processed over 1 million gallons of decontaminated salt solutions so far this fiscal year. We've got 15 tanks in different stages of planning, design, procurement, field modifications for processing more material. Several batches are either ready or nearing completion to be able to provide material to SWPF. And the accelerated basin inventory is well integrated into the liquid waste mission, and liquid waste anticipates receiving the next ABD discharges in the second quarter of fiscal year 24. In the regulatory area, SRS received DHEC and EPA approval for the Federal Facility Agreement Rev 0 Appendix E long-term projections for fiscal year 2024. And I'll let Susan explain what that means when it's her chance there. Soil and water cleanup infrastructure. So we did implement a new feral swine aerial reduction pilot project. It's not really a pilot project in that the U.S. Department of Agricultural Animal Plant Health Inspection Service has done this program for quite some time, but they're able to remove hogs from the site using helicopters to take care of them. They don't actually get removed, but they do begin the process of removal with the helicopter. What? It was pretty successful. They've been able to do it one afternoon, and they took 93 hogs out in one afternoon. So pretty fast results there. We did deer hunts this year, completed on Friday, December 15th. We took 860 hunters participated in 10 hunts. 278 deer, 49 hogs, and 9 coyotes. And all the animals were monitored and released to the hunters. We continue the virtual inspections using aerial drones to support the 7th 5-year remedy review. So saving us a lot of money on doing those remedy reviews and getting a great coverage. Those sites included about 1,470 acres, so it's a much quicker way to do this. I would note a couple things. One, as you worry about the transition, or as you're concerned about the transition and what will happen in the future about communications with you, everything I presented to you today would be presented to you in a future report that I give, except maybe the discussion about transition, because hopefully that'll be over at some point. But so there won't be any change in the way we present material. And the other thing I would note, I'm very proud to say that after 4 years, I've been able to get the grandfather clock that my father-in-law built running properly. I don't want to go into the specifics of why it wasn't running properly in public, but I would tell you that the reason it runs now is because my older daughter was disturbed that someone who runs a nuclear facility like this could not, after 4 years, get that clock running. And so she inspired me to finally sort it out, and it's running perfectly now. So, subject to your questions, except about the grandfather clock. I'm happy.
Not a question. I had to level one of those, and it's an adventure and a half. And if it's not perfectly level in every direction, that pendulum is not good up pendulum. Or any questions?
I'm afraid it was a much more embarrassing issue than that.
Oh, no. Any questions around the table for DOE? We're going to have to save those.
All right, here's the answer. So I wasn't there when it got packaged up to move, right? So it shows up at the house, and none of the chains are on it, and the weights aren't attached or anything. And I got no experience with this thing. So I put the chains on, I followed the instructions, I put the weights on, and I got them on in the right order because each weigh a little bit different, and they're not marked on this one as to which one's which, so you got to get a little scale and weigh them. So they all looked good, right? And started to clock up, and it was ticking, and everything was working, so I figured it was all good, right? The problem was that the center for the time for the clock, that was actually wound. So when I put the weight on, it was ready to go, and it started ticking. The other two, I put the weights on in the same place with the chains in the same spot, but those weren't wound. So they looked like they were wound, but they weren't. It only took me 4 years to figure that out. We figure out problems at the site much more rapidly than that. It's because we have smart people behind me doing that.
All right, any other? Yeah, John.
John Thomas, Cab. You had said that, I think it was the saltstone processing was 1 million gallons. Is that last year or total?
This fiscal year.
This fiscal year. Oh, okay, good.
Saltstone disposal.
Right, okay.
Facility.
And then the other thing was the advanced manufacturing collaboration. Was that USC Aiken?
It is at USC Aiken.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Thanks.
Kim.
Kim Ray, Cab. I know we had a representative from NNSA at our last full board meeting, and I noticed they're not here today. Are we going to have them here periodically? I know we asked this before, but are we going to have them here periodically, just not regularly?
Absolutely. I believe they will. And especially if you have any particular issues you want, we can take that to them and get them to come and provide.
Anything else? Going once, going twice? Let's move along down the agenda. We have a new face from EPA. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jana Dawson.
Can you pull
probably
that
know
over,
John
like
Richards.
right in front of you? I'm sorry.
Okay,
It's not as
sorry.
sensitive as it seems like it should be.
That better. So we'll start over. I'm Jana Dawson, EPA Region 4. Most of you probably know John Richards, John and I, and then also Breon Martin, who's here today from EPA. Work together with Savannah River site. I'm one of the remedial project managers. My area of focus is high-level waste tanks. Before I was with EPA, I was a consultant, and I consulted to EPA for years and years and years for the high-level waste. I'm very familiar with them. Just now I'm doing it on the EPA side, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. As many of you know, EPA's mantra or mission is not only regulatory oversight, but also to facilitate and make sure the public is involved, both like from an, just disseminating information, but making sure they're part of the remedy selection process. And so, it's great to be here. Great to see you all. So the updates I have, as Mr. Bundy mentioned, we just finished the 7th 5-year review at Savannah River site. That was for the operational equipment remedies. We're now starting on the next 5-year review. Because there's so many operable units at the site, what we decided to do was break up operable units, select 2 or 3, and do each 2 or 3 operable units per year, so we didn't have to do them all at the same time. So it makes our work a little more spread out and easier to do. We're now working on soil cover remedies, and we'll be working to finish those up in the next few months. So just a little background about 5-year reviews. Anytime there's any kind of hazardous substances left on site, there's obviously a record of decision about how those are going to be handled, how they're going to be cleaned up, and then that goes into the record of decision. Then every 5 years, EPA goes back and looks at those remedies to make sure they're still being implemented as originally designed and that they're still effective. So that's a little bit about what those 5-year reviews do. I guess that's all I really have right now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now or catch me at a break, whatever works. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions around the table for EPA? Seeing none, let's move over to DHEC. Susan?
Hello. So Jana mentioned the 5-year review. The one we signed, the 6th 5-year review, was for the operating equipment, and that's available to the public now. We are, as she mentioned, starting the 7th 5-year review for native soil covers and land use controls. We're going to be starting that with our site visit coming up in a few weeks. So we'll be looking at all the drone footage that Mr. Budney mentioned that they've put together, and that's a great way for us to see a lot of the units, getting that aerial footage rather than just walking around. It's a much more effective use of time, and we can see a lot more of the area. Mr. Budney also mentioned that DHEC and EPA approved the Appendix E, which is the long-term projections for fiscal year 2024. And so for Mr. Budney, that is our milestones that we have for the FFA program. So what we do is we look at for FY24, we look at the next year's milestones. Okay, so this is what we signed approved for FY24, but it's actually next year's milestones, another year out, and then it's long-term projections, which gives you, rather than a specific date, it might say like January 2034 for a record of decision. So those are the agreements that we have in place coming up for the soil and groundwater work, and of course, the liquid waste milestones are included in that appendix too. We've also approved, DHEC has approved recently a few other FFA appendices, Appendix C, which is the RECRA CERCLA units, Appendix G, which is the site evaluation areas, Appendix K, the D&D facilities, and Appendix H, which are the solid waste management units. All of those appendices for FY24 were recently approved by DHEC. And then the last thing I'll just mention is that last week we had several folks from DHEC come and join EPA and DOE for a tour of the site. We have some new folks in our in my section in the FFA program, some management, new folks in management, as well as some people who've been around for a while conduct the tour, and we appreciate the time and effort the DOE put together for planning that for us. It was a good tour, got to see a lot of good progress. It's been a while since I've been out in Saltstone, so that was nice to see all the work that's been done out there. And it was also just a really nice day. It was 77 degrees, so we really enjoyed that. So thanks. And then Greg, I don't know if you've got an update for the Aiken office.
Yeah, just a quick update. You all are used to seeing Madeline sit up here, and Madeline's with us now, but we just kind of are shifting some responsibilities just a little bit. She hasn't done anything wrong, to just clarify that. She's still going to participate, so she may actually be relieved, I'm not sure. But so you'll probably just kind of see me sitting up here, but Madeline will be participating. Another thing I wanted to follow up on is that in the November CAB meeting, we gave our ESOP presentation and had mentioned that the report would be published soon. So that report is now available, and we'll get that information to James if we haven't already done that. I don't know if Madeline's sent it to you or not, but we'll get that to you all and get that information where that report's located. And I wanted to give a huge shout out to Madeline for coordinating that and getting that together for us. So, thank you. And that's it for the regional.
Give everybody the opportunity. All right. No questions? We'll move on. Georgia DNR.
Shelley Stansel with Georgia DNR, and our update is not necessarily SRS specific, but we are updating our mobile radiation lab. We have installed a new liquid scintillator. We are also next week receiving our new alpha beta counter for to update the lab. We are also working on our exercise schedule for this year. So our focus for Plant Vogel this year is to actually do an ingestion pathway exercise, and it will be in May. So we're gearing up for that. My team is relatively new, but fully staffed finally, and we will be doing our SRS tour on February 7th. So we're looking forward to seeing you guys there on site. And that's it for me.
Okay. Any questions for DNR?
Yes. Hello. What is an ingestion exercise?
So my role in radiation emergencies is to do dose assessment and to also work with our state responders and with the plant responders. So an ingestion pathway is what happens after the plume settles if there were to be an accident. And we will actually look at what happens and what our response would be if something were to happen at one of the plants, and then how that would impact the citizens in the 10 to 50 mile radius around the plant.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Normally, since we're running a little fast, I would ask you if you want to take a break or if you want to plow ahead. But I want to be honest, I was not emotionally prepared for those farewells. So we're going to take 15 minutes, and we're going to come back at 2:10. All right, 2:10, everybody. Thank you.